Let's do it. Hi, my name's Kaitlyn, and I'm the founder of Don'tTellDaddy. We are an advocacy group raising awareness for the dangers of online grooming, child sexual abuse, and exploitation. I am the founder, and I am also a survivor of all of the prior mentioned. I've been wanting to film a podcast episode detailing my story for a very long time now. When I press record, I feel like I don't know what to say. Like, the words can't escape my mouth. And at first, I didn't want to just read my impact statement that I read in court. I wanted to tell the story like looking at the camera, like I'm talking, having a conversation. I can't do that. I get so overwhelmed with the sheer amount of just complexity within all of it. I'm like, where do I even start? What's the middle and what's the finish? And so my impact statement is also, they're my words. I wrote them. So why not read them? And if I want to make another video and expand on anything, or I can do whatever I want. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to read the impact statement that I read in court. And yeah, we're just going to get started because I delay no further, okay? Oh, and I will likely, throughout reading, pause and maybe elaborate on some things to make this more conversational. We'll see. I don't know. Okay. From the very beginning, Roy Mark Owens orchestrated a calculated campaign of exploitation. His actions were not driven by misguided affection or a moment's lapse in judgment, but by a deliberate predatory intent to sexually abuse a child. Every interaction, seemingly caring gesture, was meticulously designed with one goal: to manipulate and exploit me for his own deviant desires. He weaponized trust, affection, and a child's need for love to create opportunities for abuse and to obtain child sexual abuse material. This was not a relationship that went too far. It was a premeditated crime executed with chilling precision. Love did not factor into Roy Mark Owens' actions whatsoever. I will now be referring to the defendant with the name I knew him as, Graham Johnson. I truly believed Graham loved me as I loved him, but Graham wasn't real, and neither was his love for me. Every aspect of his fictional persona and the false intimacy he created was merely a ploy to lower my defenses and make me feel complicit in his criminal abuse. The impact of this manipulation is profound and far-reaching. My dog started barking. Had to let him inside. I'm not starting over. Let's continue. The impact of this manipulation is profound and far-reaching. An adult man does not truly love a child in a romantic or sexual way. That alone is a wildly perverted concept designed to distort a child's understanding of appropriate boundaries and relationships. His claimed feelings for me were simply part of the grooming process to make me feel special and bonded to him, when in reality he saw me as an object to exploit. This distortion of love and relationships has had lasting effects on my life. He crafted fictions and scenarios specifically to exploit my child's mind and body in unforgivable ways that will impact me for life. While the trauma bond makes it feel very real still, his love was a lie from a monster without an ounce of human decency. I owe him nothing but the resolve to heal. The wounds inflicted upon me may be invisible, but they run deep and have shaped every aspect of my life. Research has shown that emotional abuse, especially when endured over extended periods, can be more traumatizing than physical abuse. For a decade, Roy Mark Owens systematically manipulated and exploited me, leaving scars, while not visible to the naked eye, are etched into my psyche. Just because he didn't touch me physically does not mean he didn't disfigure me emotionally and psychologically. The constant manipulation led to the erosion of my self-worth, which led to the distortion of my understanding of love and relationships. These are all forms of violence that have had profound and lasting impacts on my life. The absence of physical marks doesn't negate the severity of the harm done. The invisible nature of this trauma has made the healing process even more challenging. It's easier for others to dismiss or minimize what they can't see, adding another layer of isolation to an already overwhelming experience. The justice system must recognize that the lack of physical evidence doesn't equate to a lesser crime. The emotional and psychological devastation caused by Roy Mark Owens' actions are just as real, just as damaging, and just as deserving of serious consequences as any physical assault would be. Now a question: how does one distill a decade's worth of trauma into a statement? I am going to try my best, but after writing this and rewriting this, I have realized the impact of this abuse reaches far beyond anything I can fully articulate. After being misdiagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder for over 8 years, I have now been correctly diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD. This condition, a direct result of the prolonged abuse I endured, has manifested into crippling panic attacks, at one point up to 10 a day, necessitating a current regimen of, I kind of go into in this section the medication that I am on and the nightmares that I'm experiencing. The nightmare that began with Graham continues. My CPTSD, meticulously crafted by the defendant's actions, is a lasting testament to the severity of his crimes. It forces me to consider things most people never have to think about, all because of Roy Mark Owens. Trauma can alter brain structures, as seen in PTSD. PTSD UK, a nonprofit, classifies post-traumatic stress disorder as a form of brain injury, causing both physical and mental symptoms. Roy Mark Owens inflicted this injury without physical touch. Had my injuries been visible, he would likely face serious jail time. Why should invisible, yet equally painful scars result in a lesser punishment? PTSD also causes increased stress hormones and inflammation, often leading to physical symptoms. Studies show people with PTSD are 25% more likely to develop gastrointestinal disorders. In 2020, I attempted a customer service job, but lasted only 2 days post-training due to PTSD-related health issues. The anxiety before each call was crippling, and I woke up vomiting from fear every morning. Throughout my life, PTSD has made me physically ill at least 50 times, likely an underestimate. Owens caused this physical damage without laying a hand on me. This reality deserves equal consideration in his sentencing. At age 18, I was sitting in my favorite class at school. I experienced my first full-blown panic attack. 15 minutes into the lecture, I couldn't breathe, hear, or see. That moment marked the replacement of who I was with an extremely mentally ill person. For 6 years, multiple daily panic attacks defined my life. I struggled constantly to breathe, not knowing why or what was wrong. Doctors prescribed a parade of medications: Lexapro, Effexor, Klonopin, Xanax, Prozac, Trintellix, Prazosin, and the list goes on. In 2020, as the world faced a global pandemic, my personal world neared collapse. Misdiagnosed and on ineffective medications, I became a guinea pig for baffled doctors. Unlike typical panic attacks that subside quickly, my body remained in constant alarm. My perception of myself and the world became extremely distorted. Dissociations became my prison, and now my home. While not officially diagnosed, dissociative identity disorder is a possibility. I have named alters who protect me from the childhood trauma Roy Mark Owens subjected me to. Dissociation feels like a semi-permanent dreamlike state, disconnecting you from reality. I forget time periods, events, and occasionally personal information. I feel uncertain about my identity and experience physical numbness. By 2021, my deteriorating condition led to relocation to an intensive outpatient treatment, a last resort to prevent my meticulously planned suicide. Planning my death gave me a sense of control that Roy Mark Owens had otherwise stripped me of. His manipulation, lies, and sexual exploitation trapped me in a twisted reality. His tactics were insidious, accusing me of stalling when I hesitated, weaponizing my emotions. I complied with his demands for sexual exploitation, fearing I'd lose him. In my manipulated state, I believed I was deeply in love and couldn't bear the loss. The coercive dynamic kept me in constant anxiety. Roy's affection came at a steep price, one paid in exploitation and violated trust. What he called love was a transaction with my body and dignity as currency. The trauma of having to repeatedly purchase his approval with intimate images and acts led me to dark places, including suicidal thoughts and actions. The pressure to always be available and present for his needs drained me of my own identity. This abuse corrupted my understanding of relationships, self-worth, and even my will to live. The impact rippled through every aspect of my life, leaving scars that I continue to heal from to this day. I wanted so desperately to feel loved and cherished. Graham manipulated me into believing he did, for his own sick sexual fantasy and perversion. Picture a child swinging their legs back and forth, sitting on a porch chair, waiting for their father with a packed suitcase. He never shows up. Time and time again, that child packs, hopeful, wanting so desperately for today to be the day he shows. Except it wasn't my father. It was Roy Mark Owens. I waited for him and continued with each passing day. I gave him every ounce of me, body and soul. Friends, those did not really exist for me. That is a slight exaggeration, so let me explain. I had some friends, all of whom I kept at a great distance. Friends were hazardous to the defendant's abuse. If I got too close, maybe I would reveal him, and then we couldn't be together. We couldn't risk that, right, Roy? The defendant told me I'd be nothing without him, and that no one understood me the way he did, and never would. Isolation, another tactic in his sick ploy. Everyone at a distance, or else. I couldn't fathom the thought of losing another key player in my life. I frequently think about the things I potentially missed out on. Instead of going to parties, events, Friday nights at the mall with friends, I stayed home, locked in my bedroom, being sexually exploited, abused, groomed, manipulated, and deceived by a married adult man. Peak Recovery Center, a mental health recovery facility in Colorado, defines the long-term effects of manipulation as follows. Isolation and numbness, requiring others' approval, feelings of resentment, excess judging, lack of trust, depression and anxiety. At the ripe age of 15, I fell for a man that I would much later find out never truly loved me. In fact, he was abusing me. He loved what I offered him, which was sexual objectification that would soothe his abhorrent compulsion to steal the innocence and corrupt the future of a young girl. What do you think that does to a child? To be sexually exploited, used, abused, violated, manipulated, isolated, all done by the person you thought loved you. Until it happens to you, you won't know how I feel. If you try to imagine it, you can get a sensation of it, but you don't live with it. You don't carry it around every single day. You don't endure the relentless haunting of his face or the echoing command of his voice in your nightmares, demanding you to be a good girl and strip away your dignity. You don't wake up in the cold sweats, your body remembering the violation, even when your mind tries to forget. You don't carry the weight of his presence with you every waking moment, an invisible chain that binds you to the traumatic past. It wasn't just abuse. It was a full-time occupation of my mind, body, and soul, a job I never applied for, but was forced to perform every single day. I would like to make a little side note here that when I say you don't, like I said, you don't wake up in cold sweats, your body remembering the violation. I'm in this obviously talking to the judge, but more so talking to my abuser. This platform is for survivors. So I am talking about you as well, if that is what you experience. And I am so sorry if you have to go through this too. Let's continue. This next part goes into some information about my family life and some trauma I experienced there. There are some things I'm going to leave out because this is my story and I share it how I want and how it feels safe to me. That's the motto of and mission of my advocacy group, that we as survivors start sharing our stories in ways that is safe to us. And what is safe to you is going to look very different than what is safe to me. And it's all about figuring out what that is and going from there. But there's some stuff in here I'm going to leave out. So there was some loss I had, not in terms of a passing, but some loss I had in my life. That's the context. And then we go into imagine needing love due to a lack thereof from key figures in your life and past sexual trauma needing healing. Then one day, discovering that the love you so desperately needed was a lie. How could I ever trust someone again? The wounds go deeper than trust. They permeate every aspect of my life, my relationships, my sense of self. I see my naked 15-year-old self. I see my naked 15-year-old self posing for him, being his good girl, and doing as I was told, being requested degrading acts. But just like the other adults in my life, he failed me. He failed to log off his computer when he started talking to a 15-year-old girl. He failed me every single time he didn't break my heart, because leaving me then would have hurt, but not in the excruciating fashion it does now. He could have realized at any point that his actions were wrong, but he didn't, and he failed. The worst part is the defendant knew my trauma. He was where all my secrets went. I didn't have anywhere else to put them, so I stored them with him. He used my trauma as leverage to abuse me. He knew I needed someone, and he manipulated and groomed himself into that role. This was deliberate and meticulous. Roy Mark Owens planned his abuse. He is calculated and precise in his abuse, which is just another reason to secure him behind bars and protect our most vulnerable. We deserve proper justice. Roy Mark Owens, my love for Graham Johnson was pure. I was addicted to him. I craved Graham like air. He was my escape from the traumatic reality surrounding me. He knew that too, and used my childhood trauma as leverage to abuse me, a golden ticket into my broken heart. You made up Graham to get into the heart of a child to abuse them. You read between my lines. I remember our long conversations and how much I thought they were what I needed, that you were what I needed. You weren't available to answer at the drop of the hat, nor did I have your actual telephone number. I would beg for time to talk, and eventually I would receive a call. Ring. It's the love of your life. Unknown number. I answer, and there he is. His deep voice entrances me, and I'm immediately sucked in. My safe zone. I tell him about my problems, ramble on and on, until I wasn't allowed to go on. I was wasting time. I know he doesn't have a lot of it. He has to go back to work at the radio station he owns, except he doesn't. I'm sorry, he's right. I'm stalling. I do as I'm told for the next however long it takes for him to ejaculate to my 15-year-old innocent voice and body. We would video call a lot. I was especially shy there and stalled forever. I think I remember hanging up on him a few times before the act began. I would get in trouble. He was disappointed in me. I knew what he needed and I didn't comply. How dare I? Bad girl. Daddy knows best and is training you to be a good girl for him one day. You remember when we would get married? I couldn't wait. We talked about marriage and babies. You knew how much I wanted them, and I knew how much you wanted them with me. You were always very open about your breeding kink, among other ones. The ones I couldn't do for Graham. I would disappoint him again. I was shy and scared, too scared to fill some desires that he wanted. I tried a few times, but I disappointed Graham those times too. However, 99% of the time, I complied. Graham was my dominant, and I was his submissive. So, I gave Graham exactly what he told me he needed. 99% of the time, whatever it was. Pictures, videos, hours upon hours of video calls, phone calls. You gave me your ear, and in return, you stole my innocence. I'm afraid that wasn't a fair trade. I'm afraid my little heart can't handle this heartbreak even to this day, because the one person I thought loved me unconditionally as I was, taught so by him, never did, and lied with every breath he drew. His name is not Graham Johnson. He is not 40 years old. He does not have just 2 daughters my age. He does not live in Austin, Texas. Roy Mark Owens is in his 60s. He is married. He never loved me. And his name is Roy Mark Owens. Roy, you will never truly know the depth of how I feel. I'm sure many questions arose when you found out I came forward. Why? Not for me. This process has been grueling, every step feeling like a marathon. I battled myself internally for over a year before coming forward. You are etched into my very fiber. Coming forward felt like I was betraying the most important person in my life. It is the worst heartbreak I have ever experienced. I have been betrayed in vile ways by family members, family friends, and personal friends. Still, this betrayal has been the hardest. This has felt like a death. The pain ripples in the same fashion. But regardless of my pain, I knew I had to tell somebody. I had to for every other little girl who would potentially fall victim to him. Knowing that there were probably children actively being preyed upon by him. I could not live with the thought of him crafting the same future for another child. I was suffering, trying to convince myself to stay just one more day. It wasn't fair, and it would be a catastrophe to allow this to happen again. Roy, he may not have known the depth of it, but I loved him with every fiber of my being. The love I felt for him was all-consuming, a tidal wave that swept away my childhood and reshaped my entire world. He was the sun my heart orbited around, the air my teenage lungs breathed. His presence, even from afar, filled every corner of my mind during those fragile, formative years. While he kept me in his diary like a dirty little secret, I clung to him like a sacred vow. The intensity of my devotion to him became the backdrop of my existence, coloring every experience, every relationship. But life has a way of shedding light on the darkest corners of our minds. As I grew, as I learned, as I healed, the fog began to lift. With each therapy session, each moment of self-reflection, the years of brainwashing began to crumble. It wasn't a sudden realization, but a gradual awakening, like emerging from a long, disorienting dream. Then came the day when the last veil fell. I woke up and felt the full weight of your violation crushing me. The love I had cherished for so long revealed itself for what it really was, a prison of his making. Every memory, every moment we shared, now felt tainted, leaving me grappling with the profound sense of betrayal and loss. The journey from blind adoration to painful awareness has been excruciating, but it has also been my path to freedom. I may carry the scars of our relationship with me, but I no longer carry him. I hope he knows just how much I loved him, and I hope he carries that weight with him every single day. Every heart-shattering dagger was caused by him. He is the sole keeper of my suffering. It is his, and he cannot throw it away. because I have to live with it forever because of him, and so does he. He is not the only person who has caused me trauma, but I give it all to him because I want to. I want him to have it as my parting gift. His confession now doesn't undo the damage. The allure was in the forbidden nature of our relationship, once exposed for what it truly was. It's revealed as the abuse it always was. The depth of my misplaced devotion to you cost me my sense of self, my innocence, my mental health. Roy, your actions deserve severe consequences. Prison isn't just about punishment. It's about protection. Protection from other potential victims. Protection for society from predators like him. It's about sending a message that exploiting and abusing children carries serious repercussions. Probation is not enough. That's what he got. It doesn't reflect the gravity of his crimes or the lasting impact on his victims. Prison time would provide a strong deterrent for potential offenders, offer him time for genuine reflection and rehabilitation, and give us victims a sense of justice and closure, and demonstrate society's commitment to protecting its most vulnerable members, children. His manipulative tactics didn't stop with me and won't stop with me. Without serious intervention, there's a risk, huge risk, he will continue to prey upon vulnerable individuals. He's shown a pattern of exploitation and abandonment. Even now, with his guilty plea, I fear he's still performing, still trying to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Real justice, real change requires more than a performance. It requires accountability, and that accountability should include time behind bars. I find it deeply offensive and cruel that the defense characterizes the defendant's loss of employment and requirement to register as a sex offender as something he has had to endure. These are not hardships to be endured, but appropriate consequences for his deliberate and harmful actions. To frame it in this way trivializes the real, lasting trauma that I and potentially other victims have actually endured because of his choices. While the defendant faces the natural repercussions of his criminal behavior, I continue to grapple with the profound psychological and emotional damage inflicted by his abuse. The impact of his actions on my life is not something I simply endure. It's a daily struggle that has fundamentally altered my existence. This attempt to paint the defendant as a victim of circumstances rather than as someone facing the just consequences of his own predatory actions is a stark reminder of how sexual abuse survivors are often further victimized by the legal process. The rest of this is just for the judge, and I don't feel is needed to get the point of my story. So yeah, I would like to maybe give a little bit of context. So the main part of the abuse really started when I was 15 and lasted until I was about 23, 24. But when I met him, I was 14. And he had catfished me. So in the beginning, I thought he was a teenage boy. I think I thought he was 16 or 17. And he was using one of those Abercrombie and Fitch model photos. But, I was a kid. So I was just like, oh, score, the 16-year-old Abercrombie model wants me, when in reality, it was a 50-year-old man. If I was 14, he would have been like 48 or 49. But he was, yeah, anyway, you get it. Anyway, so eventually he said that he was catfishing me. He told me he was, and sent me a different picture that still wasn't him. It was this guy in his 20s, redhead. He was like a cutie, you know? And then he was in his 20s, and I'm like 14. So I'm like, you know, at first I'm like, whoa, that's like crazy, you know, like, no, that's weird, you're an adult. But he was so cute. And I was already talking to him for a while at this point, and wanted to keep talking to him. So I put that aside, and we kept talking. And then a while later, he told me who he really was, which is who I knew him as for the rest of the abuse. So we video chatted. I would see his face every time. Like, he didn't hide his identity once he told me his real identity. This is confusing. So basically, he told me his name was Graham Johnson, that he was like 35, and yeah. But my response when he sent me a picture of himself, which it was an actual photo of him, my response to him was, "Ew, you're old." That's what I texted him back. And but by that time, he had already had a few months of manipulation, brainwashing, grooming under my belt. I was already trapped. And it didn't matter what he looked like, how old he was. I really thought that he loved me, and that I was in love with him. And he convinced me that age was just a number. And he convinced me that I would have nothing without him. That was a huge part of his grooming process, that there was no one that could live up to him and the things he could provide for me. He really got to know me, and I thought he was my best friend more than anything. So, among this being so incredibly violating, it's also so incredibly heartbreaking. And I don't know if I'll ever get to the point where I can look at him and think of him how I feel about him, how I feel about other perpetrators. Because I can look at somebody else's perpetrator and think the right things, think gross, disgusting, like, what a horrible person. But then when I look at mine, it's just different. And I don't know, maybe that's why I am doing this, because I want to get conversations going with survivors where they can be open about Stockholm Syndrome, these horrible, horrible things that we experience as survivors when we leave our abuser. Because we don't leave and then it's just better. Most of the time, all of the time, I would guess it gets a lot worse before it gets better. And it never gets better or back to normal. You become a completely different person. You lose your old self. And all you can do is pick up the pieces that you still have and try and make something new, which I'm doing a pretty good job at, I would like to say. But even with that to say, I have so many days that still feel like living is impossible. But if you're a survivor, I want you to be listening, really listening to me. You are not alone. We are here for you. And coming forward is possible. It might just look different than the way I did it, or the way she did it, or the way he did it, or the way they did it. It's not about going to law enforcement, calling your mom and telling her, if those aren't safe options. Journaling, if it's safe for you, could be a really great way to figure out what that safe way is. Talking to me or talking to a different advocacy organization or a different nonprofit about what could look safe for you is an option as well. So thank you for listening to my story. I love you all. And they wanted silence, so we yell.